The dreaded purple tier begins this weekend. Why local businesses fear they won't survive another round of COVID closures. A toxic and at times threatening environment. Women running for office in San Diego tell their stories about the harassment they face online. And preserving a colourful part of San Diego's history, artists go to court to save murals slated for demolition. I'm Alison St. John, and the KPBS Roundtable starts now.
Now on The Finest. In San Diego and beyond, Our Lady of Guadalupe has morphed in meaning and form over the past 500 years.
She can be a source of comfort. She can be a source of pain. Her power comes because she has all of these different facets to her.
Listen now wherever you get your podcasts.
Hello and welcome to the KPBS Roundtable. I'm Alison St. John, in for Mark Sauer. Our guests this week include Laurie Weisberg, reporter for the San Diego Union-Tribune, Kayla Jimenez, reporter for Voice of San Diego, and Andrea Lopez Villafana, also from the Union-Tribune. California has now surpassed 1 million COVID-19 cases, and COVID numbers continue to creep up all over the state. As feared, San Diego has fallen back into the dreaded purple tier of COVID restrictions. They will go into effect Saturday. This is not the first time that many county businesses have been told they have to restrict indoor operations or cease them altogether, but several factors make this time more painful and threaten the very survival of even well-established businesses. San Diego Union-Tribune reporter Laurie Weisberg has been talking to business owners around town to get a feel for what they're doing to respond to this new setback. Laurie, welcome to the Roundtable.
Thank you for having me.
Now, under the purple tier, we won't be able to sit and eat inside restaurants or bars at all after tomorrow. Beyond restaurants, what other businesses will be most severely affected by this?
I think the biggest businesses that are impacted are gyms and movie theaters. I think those are, and bars, of course, that serve food. So I think those are the biggest impacts. I mean, we know churches and schools are impacted, museums, but in terms of businesses, I'd say that. And then retail, while they don't have to shut down indoors, they do have their capacity limited. Right now, they've been able to open up at 50% capacity indoors, and malls too. That will go down to 25%.
Okay, now the county says that it plans to step up enforcement under these new rules. What would that look like?
Well, so they do have enforcement now, but we haven't seen them. I feel like to a degree, local law enforcement has looked the other way, but they must have said, multiple times during the press conference this week that they are stepping up. That started with a letter that Dr. Wilma Wooten sent out from the County of Public Health to all the local law enforcement agencies for warning them that they, have the power and should exercise it to cite businesses that are not obeying the law. They have the ability to cite, I imagine, give warnings, and if need be, shut down businesses, although Supervisor Nathan Fletcher said, we don't want it to come to that. There's a hotline that people can call. So it is very complaint driven. And as news of this has come out, I think you're hearing more and more businesses saying either kind of coyly or straight out that they're going to stay open. I think the majority won't do that, but I think you're going to see some examples of that happening.
So then we'll have to see how the county decides to respond. Yeah. I mean, the county does put out new numbers most days with all the changing numbers. Did you find any business owners who are too busy really to keep up with those changes and hadn't even heard of the new restrictions?
So I would find it hard to believe that they aren't keeping up with that. But we did talk to a small shop owner who said she wasn't aware of this, and usually there'll be some friends that will text her and alert her to it. So she's obviously aware now, and there is a days long period that they have to adjust to it. So it was officially known Tuesday, and you have until midnight Friday to comply. But I think many have been planning for this day because it's such a week-to-week sort of gut-wrenching, stressful period where they keep waiting. Will it be this Tuesday? Will it be next Tuesday when we fall into a more restrictive tier?
Now, you wrote about some who chose to simply close, even though they can legally stay open. Why did they do that?
I was talking to David Cohn of the Cohn Restaurant Group, who obviously is a very long-time experienced restaurateur with about 24 different restaurants in the county. And he said, you have to kind of do this calculation. Does it cost me more to stay open than to close? And that means keeping the utilities on, hiring workers and then letting them go, retraining workers, trying to find workers, paying, their payroll. Maybe it makes more sense, more financial sense to avoid all those expenses and just stay closed. No, you won't get any revenue. But most of these restaurants at 25% capacity and outdoors still say they're lucky if they break even. So it's not like they're making money. I think a lot of them have stayed open in part to help their employees. So I think there is a calculation. And David Cohn, he rarely closes restaurants, and he's closing 3 venues in Hillcrest, including his, this first nonprofit restaurant, Tacos Libertad, because it hasn't been able to be open anyway because they have no real ability to do outdoor dining, and there just wasn't enough room inside to do much in the way of 25% capacity. So they're going to close those permanently, which was surprising to me because they're so successful. But they're making those calculations like every other restaurant owner is. I don't know how many are even staying open now because I think they're having to dip into their own reserves and savings to pay the bills.
Well, right. The first time that we had this level of shutdown, there was the Paycheck Protection Program. But now the inability of Congress to agree on a COVID relief package is really going to hit home, right?
Right. I mean, most of them long ago ran out of that money. And I think it was a really important lifeline. They did need that money. And right. And they recognize, just as you and I do, that it's going to be some time before Congress agrees on a stimulus package. So until then, how do they last? And of course, then we're going into cooler, sometimes rainy weather where maybe people, even with plenty of heaters, don't want to dine outside. So they've got that they're worried about. I mean, during the summer, a lot of them did pretty well because it was a very appealing to sit outside. And if you had the real estate to do that, including sidewalks, streets, parking lots to turn into impromptu dining areas, it worked out well. But now the cold weather, we're kind of wimpy in San Diego County about being out in the cold. So I think they're worried about that, the colder season too, hurting.
Yeah, we'd really have to wrap up warm to go eat in the outdoors right now. But how much help would it be? I mean, we can still order takeout. Is that enough to keep some of them going?
Right. So I think some can survive on takeout, but I think many more cannot. I don't think they make enough to do that. And there is kind of to-go cocktails. One restaurateur told me that the novelty of that wore off long ago. So I don't think they can do that unless you're more a fast casual place. Or I talked to somebody who owns with his brother some Jersey Mike's places. He said those are doing just fine. But a restaurant they have that's more a traditional restaurant, is not. So I think it's the type of restaurant venue you have, and that's why to-go works for some, but it's not. I don't know that it's enough to prop them up during this time.
But that is perhaps the least we can do is look around for establishments that are doing takeout and go ahead and patronize them. Yeah.
Supervisor Fletcher mentioned that in his press conference. Maybe we can support these restaurants by getting takeout, the gyms by paying for our membership, even if we can't go inside, those sorts of steps.
Could this affect all the retail stores that, rely on the Christmas season to make their operations profitable?
Right. So this is pretty bad timing for that. They already are battling, the competition from online shopping, which some of them can, they can have their own online outlets themselves. I think it will hurt them. Maybe 25% capacity, and if they can do some stuff outside their shop setup, but generally, that's going to be during what would normally be a pretty busy season, letting only 25% of what your normal customer volume would be to come inside is going to be tough. So no, I think they're going to have a tough time of it unless they're very savvy and can convert much of their business to online.
Well, if we can bring the case rate down and if restrictions were to ease again, and that's a big if, how soon could that happen, that we would change from the purple back to the red tier?
The estimate I'm getting is about, at minimum, 3 weeks, that we could be out of this in 3 weeks, because you have to have 2 weeks of consecutive good scores on your testing. on your infection rates. So 3 weeks, but most people I'm talking to, and even the business themselves, aren't holding out hope that it'll be that brief a period. They think it'll be longer. And then there's, of course, the worry that, okay, they get out of it. Let's say they do get out of it in 3 weeks. Do they reopen right away with the fear that, oops, we can drop back into purple tier again? It's that on again, off again cycle of openings and closings that's really got them worried and fearful of making any move too hastily.
Well, let's hope these new restrictions do bring the caseload down. Laurie, thanks so much for being in touch with the businesses and bringing us some news of their progress.
No, glad to help out. Thank you.
I've been speaking with Laurie Weisberg, who covers tourism and hospitality for the San Diego Union Tribune. Developing a thick skin is part of the job for someone running for public office, but what gets expressed on social media these days goes well beyond criticism of policy. That's especially true for the growing number of women running for political office across San Diego County. Their stories bring to light the rampant misogyny and, in some cases, threats made by those threatened by our changing demographics. Voice of San Diego's Kayla Jimenez reported on this alarming trend and spoke with some of the candidates who are sharing their personal stories. Welcome back to the Roundtable, Kayla.
Hi, thanks for having me.
What prompted you to think this was a story that needed to be investigated and told?
Yeah, so I have been talking to women candidates and sitting office members up in North County for a while now, and they've kind of shared their stories with me of either receiving harassment online or in person via stalking or text message and phone calls. Priya Bhat Patel, the councilwoman from Carlsbad, and Encinitas Councilwoman Kelly Hinsey are a few of those women. And then I just saw a larger trend and then kind of questioned whether that trend of harassment impacted other women running for office, particularly on the Democratic Party, as the county seems to be shifting blue.
Well, let's start with Carlsbad, which of course has been a Republican city for many years and is sort of shifting blue along with all the other cities in North County. And you tell the story of Councilwoman Corey Schumacher, who felt the need to get a restraining order against her harasser. What did she say she was subjected to? And what were the issues that sparked the harassment?
Yeah, I think this is a very complicated case. And Corey Schumacher came out and wrote in court filings that one of the men who lives in her district stalked her and posted on social media that he intended to force her to leave her home. And she said that this was going on for a while, but had become increasingly concerning between July and September. I think there is a line where this man and other men have said that it wasn't intentional towards her and it was policy-based. Those criticisms, two of the men have come back with anti-SLAPP suits against her, and then that is part of that case. But she generally said that as the county has been shifting blue, she is part of the LGBT community. She said people in that community and then women of color have been increasingly facing harassment by men and other women who have kind of come at them if they don't agree with their policies, for example.
Well, you were talking about the line between something that's impolite versus illegal. What can law enforcement do in these scenarios? Has it been difficult for these women to find any help from law enforcement?
Law enforcement officials told me in general that they investigate any criminal threats that come to them if they're known or flagged. Some of the trouble that these women have had is that these text messages or harassment emails or content hasn't been explicitly said, I'm going to kill you, but it's something of the sort that makes them fear for themselves and their families.
A sort of a lack of civility in politics has been a growing problem, and Mesa College professor Carl Luna, for example, has tried to combat this with conferences about civility in politics, but I don't remember any male candidates filing restraining orders. What makes threats against women worth paying more attention to, would you say?
Yeah, I talked to associate professor of criminal justice at San Diego State. Her name's Dr. Esperanza Camargo. And she told me that the reason to pay attention to these threats particularly are because women politicians are just an extension of the violence against these women is an extension of the violence that women kind of face every day. And that's highlighted in marginalized groups like Black, Latino, and Asian women and those that traditionally transcend gender roles, where they're put in this place where they have some sort of power.
Right. I mean, there was even a couple of candidates who were running against each other who agreed that this was going too far, weren't there? How did the Encinitas mayor, the candidates for Encinitas mayor, find common ground?
Yeah, there was a virtual forum hosted by the Coast News back in October where Encinitas mayor Catherine Blakespear and her challenger Julie Thunder disagreed about a lot of issues in town, but they both swapped stories about the kind of toxicity that comes with running for office in that coastal town in particular. And I think it's seen by a lot of the residents there in certain Facebook groups that have come up, kind of attacks towards both of the women. And I know that there's been some fear there as well as protests have gone on in recent months about just the safety of Catherine Blakespear, and then Encinitas Councilwoman Kelly Hinsey has expressed that to me as well.
And a lot of this, of course, has taken place on social media platforms. What role would you say Facebook and other social media platforms have in reining in this kind of abuse?
Going back to that, I think when I talked to Encinitas Councilwoman Kelly Hinsey, she expressed frustration with the lack of moderation on Facebook and said that, for example, one of the Encinitas focus groups allowed people to continue posting despite calling council members Nazis and posting hate speech. I think Facebook has a lot of power here. We saw a few weeks ago that Facebook banned the Defend East County group in an attempt to continue crackdowns on election-related misinformation and threats. So I think we're seeing this increase of information spread or violence against women, and it really has become kind of on the social media platforms to manage that content. And it's interesting to see what's going to happen post-election.
Well, in spite of these stories, women and Democratic women do seem to be making some headway in North County. Oceanside has its first woman mayor, Esther Sanchez, who's also the first Latina. Did she talk to you about her experience of years in politics in Oceanside?
Yeah, and one of the reasons why I also decided to write the story is because I was talking to all the 12 candidates for Oceanside mayor and realized that Esther was the only woman running for office. We talked after Election Day, and she told me a little bit about how a lot of the harassment that she has gotten has been on social media. But she said that most of the worst that she's faced has kind of been in the public eye of people that she knew personally who had attacked her. And she said she's been dealing with bias for a long time, so she's used to it, but that this was kind of a different sort of bias she felt. And she wasn't sure if it was because she was a Latina and a woman in somewhere where there's not many women who run or sit on the council.
Yes, you have to be tough to run as a woman in some cases. I know the San Diego Democratic Party has been actively recruiting women to run for public office for years. Are you hearing that this is an issue that makes some women hesitate to come forward?
Yeah, so multiple women in the Democratic Party, I sat with them in a Zoom meeting and they kind of talked to me about their experiences with threats and public harassment against them while running for office, and said that they knew of others who kind of shared the same reticence and concerns of other women, saying how they were shocked that they could run for office and kind of be put in the spotlight like that. And then Sue Alderson is someone who has been prominent in the Democratic Club, said that they're asking people who are trying to recruit and saying, what if I want to have a family? Are they going to be at risk if I decide to run for public office? So I think there's a lot of contention back and forth, but then also other women are saying that pressure on them has pushed them further to want to run for that position and represent their communities.
Well, let's hope the next election cycle this might recede somewhat, but we shall see. Kayla, thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
We've been speaking with Kayla Jimenez, who's a reporter for Voice of San Diego.
Now on The Finest. In San Diego and beyond, Our Lady of Guadalupe has morphed in meaning and form over the past 500 years.
She can be a source of comfort. She can be a source of pain. Her power comes because she has all of these different facets to her.
Listen now wherever you get your podcasts.
Out with the old, in with the new. That's what's happening for a couple of schools in Logan Heights. But modernizing means saying goodbye to colorful parts of the community's history in the form of murals that were part of the campus for decades. A legal fight has emerged as the artists try to save their work. It opens a larger conversation on the importance of public art and how we preserve that history. Joining us is Andrea Lopez Villafaña, who covered the story for the San Diego Union Tribune. Hello, Andrea.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Well, first of all, set the scene for us in Logan Heights. There are 4 murals at stake, and one has already been destroyed. This is radio, but give us a visual. What do they look like? Where are they painted?
Well, first off, these murals are beautiful, and as you can imagine, they're pretty large. 2 of the ones that are still there, those are by artist Sal Barajas. One of them is on the side of a building. It's about 25 by 10 feet, and it's an image of 2 graduates holding a book and a diploma, basically capturing this idea of these students are going to graduate soon and go on into a new world. The other image, the other mural by Sal Barajas, is on the outside of an old elevator shaft, and it has 3 words: graduation, education, motivation. And on the side, it has images of civil rights leaders. Then there's a mural by Mario Torrero. That one was painted on removable panels, and it was originally inside the school's library. But the artists tell me it's since been removed and it's been placed in storage, which has caused some damage to the mural. But that one's called Cosmic Testament, and it's an image of 1970s musicians. It's very colorful, very kind of like hippie. It feels like it when you look at it. And the one that was destroyed, that was demolished, was by Salvador Torres. That was a mural that featured memorial students, graduates, veterans of World War I. And it also had an image of one of the astronauts who died in the 1986 Space Shuttle Challenger crash.
And these are all local artists, right? And they've been part of the school environment for quite a while, huh?
Right. And not just part of the school, but part of the community. These are artists and founders of the murals in Chicano Park in Barrio Logan. It's next to, in the Logan Heights area.
So why are they being torn down? What's happening at the schools?
Well, the schools are being renovated. Essentially, the campuses will become this large complex that serves K through 12 students. And I do have to mention that the community is extremely excited about this transformation, right? This large educational campus is really important for the community, but a lot of them, are heartbroken by the thought of losing these murals that so many people in the community who've attended these schools grew up, seeing every day when they were at school.
Now, the artists want to safely remove the murals. How do they propose doing that? Could they be preserved somewhere else?
Yeah, well, it's not an easy process, but they do have the help of art conservator Nathan Zakrim. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. He uses a specific technique to remove murals from walls safely. And, this is a technique he's used for 30 years plus. And essentially, you remove a piece of the wall with the mural, and it can be transported safely anywhere. Where they would store those murals, they weren't sure on that yet.
According to your article, the law does give artists the right to remove their work in cases like this. But what are the obstacles?
Yeah, well, the biggest one is money. And in this case, it's time, because construction is going already on school. But money for, removing, as you can imagine, removing an artwork from a wall, especially one that is a piece of a wall, is complicated, costly, and time consuming. So the artists are kind of in a difficult position with, deciding on whether just watching their murals be destroyed and having to seek some kind of legal action, or give up the rights to their murals and seek some other kind of remedy.
I take it the school has not offered to pay.
The school did not provide any details about their negotiations, but the artist did tell me that the school has offered to possibly have one of the artists recreate 2 of the murals, which they would pay for. But the artists are really sticking together in these negotiations, and they don't want to give up their rights to any of their murals or do anything without making sure that every artist is going to be compensated or helped in some sort of way.
Now, if the murals are eventually destroyed, they are being documented for posterity in other ways, right?
Yeah, so the school district took high-resolution photos of all the murals, and that's common with these kinds of situations. And the photos will be housed at the San Diego Central Library, the San Diego History Center, and UC Santa Barbara Library Special Collections, which also houses some papers by one of the artists, Salvador Torres.
Now, there is a plan, I understand, to develop art for the new educational complex once the construction is complete. What is that?
Yeah, there is. And like I mentioned, they're still discussing with the district. It could be possible that the district ends up working some kind of deal with the artist where the artists would be paid to recreate their murals on that campus, but that still hasn't been worked out yet.
And it's not just the artists who want the paintings preserved, right? I mean, how important is this public art for the community as a whole?
Right. And like I mentioned earlier, a lot of community members, especially in the Logan Heights areas, they live here and now their children attend these schools. But when they went to these schools, they grew up with these murals. In fact, one of the muralists went to Memorial when he was young, and there was a piece of artwork there that inspired him, and it's really what inspired him to become an artist. So a lot of people in the community have connections, not just to the artwork itself, but also to the artists who have been instrumental to the community when it comes to activism and capturing the community's culture. So people are very, connected to these murals and the artists.
San Diego Unified says that the district does hope to reach an amicable agreement. So what is next? Is construction on hold? What's happening right now?
Construction is on hold, but only in the areas near the murals. The construction is still ongoing on other parts of the school, but they were able to find a way to move construction away from the murals for now while they're still in the negotiation process.
Okay, it'll be interesting to see what happens. Thank you so much, Andrea.
Thank you.
That's our show for this week. I'd like to thank our guests, Laurie Weisberg and Andrea Lopez Villafana from the San Diego Union Tribune and Kayla Jimenez from Voice of San Diego. A reminder, you can always find our shows on our website at kpbs.org and on all major podcast platforms. I'm Alison St. John, and we'll see you next week on The Round Table.
Now on The Finest, we examine an icon. Our Lady of Guadalupe has been a powerful symbol for 500 years, and artists have reimagined her as a source of resilience and pride. Listen now wherever you get your podcasts.